The morning sun painted the rice fields golden as Kim Tae-ho bent low over the water. His hands moved through the green stalks with practiced ease, checking each plant for signs of disease or pest damage. The work was hard, but it was honest work. The same work his grandfather had done and his great-grandfather before that. "Tae-ho, come eat breakfast," his father Kim Dong-woo called from the small farmhouse. The older man's voice carried easily across the quiet fields. Tae-ho straightened his back and wiped the sweat from his forehead. At 22 years old, he was strong from years of farm labor. His shoulders were broad, his hands calloused, and his face had the healthy tan of someone who spent his days under the open sky. The farmhouse was simple but clean. His younger sister Kim So-young had already set the table with rice, kimchi, and dried fish. She worked as a teacher in the nearby town but still helped with morning chores when she could. "The rice looks good this year," Dong-woo said as they hard. His hair was gray now and his back bent from decades of farm work, but his eyes were still sharp. "Yes, father. If the weather holds, we should have a strong harvest," Tae-ho replied. So-young looked up from her bowl. "I heard something strange at school yesterday. Mrs. Lee said there might be trouble coming from space, something about aliens attacking human colonies." Dong-woo frowned. "Space wars are not our concern. We are farmers. We grow food. The rest of the galaxy can fight if it wants to." But Tae-ho felt a small chill run down his spine. He had heard whispers too. News traveled slowly to their quiet farming world of New Hanyang, but it did travel. Stories of entire planets going dark, of alien creatures that could not be stopped, of human armies being crushed like insects. "Maybe we should pay attention," Tae-ho said quietly. "If there really is danger." "Danger from what? Little green men?" Dong-woo laughed. "My boy, I have lived through 3 droughts, 2 floods, and 1 plague of locusts. The only danger I worry about is bad weather and crop prices." After breakfast, Tae-ho walked to the village to buy supplies. The small town was busy with the usual morning activity. Shopkeepers opened their stores, children walked to school, and old men gathered to drink tea and gossip. But today felt different. There were more people gathered around the public information screen than usual. Their faces looked worried. Tae-ho pushed through the crowd to see what was happening. The screen showed a news report from the capital city. The reporter, a serious-looking woman, spoke in urgent tones. "The alien force known as the Vorthak has destroyed 3 more human colonies in the outer systems. Military sources confirm that conventional weapons have proven ineffective against their advanced technology and biological weapons. All citizens in frontier sectors are advised to prepare for possible evacuation." The crowd murmured anxiously. Someone asked, "Are we in a frontier sector?" An old man spat on the ground. "We are farmers. Who would want to attack farmers?" But Tae-ho remembered his geography lessons. New Hanyang was indeed in the outer systems. If the aliens were moving inward, they would reach farming worlds like theirs eventually. He bought his supplies quickly and hurried home. The news had shaken him more than he wanted to admit. Over the next few days, more reports came in. Each one was worse than the last. The Vorthak were not just conquering planets, they were destroying them completely. No prisoners, no mercy, just total annihilation. The reports spoke of creatures called shadow hunters, alien warriors that stood 9 feet tall and moved like ghosts. Each one could kill dozens of human soldiers. They were smart, fast, and completely ruthless. "It is just stories to scare people," Dong-woo insisted when Tae-ho brought up the news again. "Governments always make up monsters to keep citizens afraid and obedient." But So-young was less sure. "The other teachers are talking about evacuation plans. The school board received official notices." "This is not just stories, father." 3 weeks later, the notices came to their village too. Tae-ho found the official document nailed to the town message board. The government seal looked very real. The language was formal and frightening. "All citizens of New Hanyang are advised that this world has been designated as potentially at risk. Voluntary evacuation ships will arrive within 10 days. Citizens who choose to remain do so at their own risk. Military protection cannot be guaranteed." That evening, the Kim family sat around their dinner table in heavy silence. Finally, So Young spoke. "We should go," she said simply. "Pack what we can carry, and leave on the evacuation ships." "Leave?" Dongwoo's voice rose. "Leave our home? Leave our land? This farm has been in our family for 4 generations. My grandfather cleared these fields with his own hands. I will not abandon everything because of government fear-mongering." "Father, if the aliens are real," So Young began. If, the old man interrupted. "I have heard too many ifs in my life. I know only what I can see and touch. These rice fields are real. This house is real. Space monsters are just stories." Taeho looked back and forth between his father and sister. Part of him wanted to agree with So Young. The safe choice was to leave. But another part of him understood his father's stubbornness. This land was more than just property. It was their identity, their history, their whole world. "What do you want to do, Taeho?" So Young asked. He thought carefully before answering. "I want to protect our family, but I also want to protect our home. Maybe the danger will not come here. Maybe the military will stop the aliens before they reach us." So Young shook her head. "The military has not stopped them anywhere else." But Dongwoo smiled and patted his son's shoulder. "Good boy. A man does not run from shadows. We will stay and tend our rice. If trouble comes, we will face it together." Over the following days, about half the village chose to evacuate. Families loaded their belongings onto government transports and headed for the spaceport in the capital city. Others, mostly older farmers like Dongwoo, decided to stay. The Kim family watched their neighbors leave with mixed feelings. So Young had finally agreed to stay, but Taeho could see the worry in her eyes. On the 7th day after the evacuation notice, everything changed. Taeho was working in the far rice field when he saw the first signs. Bright flashes of light in the sky, like lightning but wrong somehow. Then a rumbling sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. He looked up and saw something that made his blood freeze. Ships. Dozens of them. Black shapes moving across the blue sky like insects. They were too far away to see clearly, but they were definitely not human vessels. As he watched, some of the ships began to glow. Beams of energy shot down from space, striking targets somewhere beyond the mountains. The light was so bright it hurt to look at directly. Then came the sound. A deep, rolling thunder that went on and on. The ground shook beneath Taeho's feet. He ran toward the farmhouse, his heart pounding. Halfway there, he saw something that made him stop and stare. Objects were falling from the sky. Not debris from the energy beams, but deliberate drops. Large, dark shapes that slammed into the earth with tremendous force. Even from a distance, Taeho could see they were not random chunks of metal. They were drop pods, and something was climbing out of them. Taeho reached the farmhouse just as his father and sister came running outside. "What is happening?" "So Young," cried. Dongwoo's face had gone pale. For the first time since the evacuation notices arrived, the old farmer looked truly afraid. "I think," he said quietly, "we should have listened to the government." In the distance, smoke rose from the mountains, where the drop pods had landed, and somewhere in that smoke Taeho knew the shadow hunters were beginning their hunt. 3 days had passed since the alien ships appeared in the sky. 3 days of terror that changed everything on New Hanyang. The first night, distant explosions lit up the horizon like deadly fireworks. The second day brought smoke clouds that blocked out the sun. By the third morning, the radio signals from the capital city had gone completely silent. Taeho sat beside his father's bed, changing the bandage on Dongwoo's injured leg. The old man had fallen while trying to move their livestock to safety when the bombing started. Now he could barely walk. "The pain is not so bad today," Dongwoo said, but his face was pale and sweat beaded his forehead. "You need real medicine, father, not just the herbs we have here," Taeho replied. He looked toward the window, where So Young kept watch. "I have to go to town. Dr. Park's clinic will have antibiotics." So Young turned from the window. "The town might not be safe. We have not seen anyone for 2 days. Father will get worse without proper medicine. I have to try. That afternoon, Tejo loaded his old bicycle with empty bags and water bottles. The journey to town usually took 30 minutes. Today, he expected it might take much longer. The hour. Road was eerily quiet. No traffic, no people, no sounds except his bicycle wheels on the pavement. Abandoned cars sat along the roadside, their doors hanging open as if their owners had fled in panic. As he got closer to town, Tejo began to see the real damage. Several buildings had collapsed. Scorch marks blackened the walls of others. Glass covered the streets like deadly snow. But the most frightening thing was the silence. A town of 5,000 people, and he could not hear a single voice. Dr. Park's clinic sat on the main street, its windows intact but dark. Tejo tried the front door and found it unlocked. Inside, medical supplies were scattered across the floor. Someone had searched the place in a hurry. He gathered what he could find: antibiotic pills, bandages, pain medication. As he worked, he listened carefully for any sound that might indicate danger. That was when he heard the clicking. It was a strange sound, like fingernails tapping on metal, but faster and more rhythmic. Click, 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 pause, click, click. It seemed to come from somewhere deeper in the building. Tejo froze. He had heard refugees describe that sound on the radio before the signal stopped. It was the sound the shadow hunters made when they moved. Very slowly, he turned toward the back of the clinic. The clicking was getting closer. A shadow moved across the hallway entrance. Something large. Something that did not move like a human being. Tejo's heart hammered in his chest. He looked around desperately for another way out. There was a window behind the reception desk, but it faced the main street. If he broke it, the sound might attract more attention. The clicking stopped. In the silence that followed, Tejo could hear his own breathing, loud as thunder in his ears. He crept toward the window, moving as quietly as possible. A hand appeared around the corner of the hallway, but it was not a human hand. It had too many fingers, and each finger ended in a curved claw. The skin was dark and looked like it was covered in scales. Tejo bit his tongue to keep from crying out. He reached for the window latch. Then the creature stepped into view. It was exactly as the reports had described, but seeing it in person was completely different. The shadow hunter stood nearly 9 feet tall. Its body was covered in what looked like natural armor, dark plates that shifted and moved as it breathed. It had 4 arms, each ending in those terrible clawed hands. But it was the creature's head that made Tejo's blood turn cold. Elongated like a skull, with multiple eyes that glowed with a dim red light. Its mouth opened slightly, revealing rows of sharp teeth. The alien's head turned slowly, scanning the room. Those red eyes passed right over Tejo's hiding spot behind the desk. For a moment, nothing happened. The creature seemed to be listening or perhaps smelling the air. Its mouth opened wider, and a long snake-like tongue flicked out. Then its head snapped toward Tejo's position. Their eyes met across the room. Human and alien stared at each other for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. The shadow hunter tilted its head, almost like a curious dog. It took 1 step forward. Tejo threw himself at the window. The glass shattered as he crashed through it, sending sharp pieces flying in all directions. He felt cuts open on his arms and face, but he did not stop to worry about them. He hit the street running and did not look back. Behind him, he heard the clicking sound again, faster now. The creature was following him. Tejo knew the town better than any alien could. He ducked into an alley between 2 shops, then cut through Mrs. Kim's backyard. The clicking followed, but it seemed to be falling behind. He reached his bicycle and pedaled harder than he had ever pedaled in his life. Only when he was halfway home did he dare to look over his shoulder. The road behind him was empty. That evening, Tejo sat with his family and told them what had happened. He left out some of the more frightening details, but he could not hide the cuts on his face or the fear in his voice. "You were very brave," So Young said as she cleaned his wounds. "I was very stupid," Tejo replied. "I should have been more careful. Dongwu gripped his son's hand. You risked your life to help me. That is not stupid. That is what family does. But as the night grew darker, Taeho could not shake the memory of those red eyes. The way the creature had looked at him. There had been something in its gaze that he could not understand. Intelligence, yes. The reports had said the shadow hunters were smart. But there had been something else too. Something that almost looked like curiosity. Why had it not killed him immediately? The reports said these creatures were perfect killing machines. They destroyed everything in their path without hesitation. But this one had hesitated. Late that night, as his family slept, Taeho heard a sound outside. A soft clicking, barely audible over the wind. He crept to the window and looked out at their rice fields. In the moonlight, he could see a dark shape moving between the rows of plants. Tall, moving on 4 legs instead of 2. The shadow hunter had followed him home. But strangely, it was not approaching the house. It seemed to be patrolling the edges of their property, moving in wide circles around the farmhouse. As Taeho watched, the creature stopped and looked directly at his window. Even in the darkness, he could see those red eyes glowing. They stared at each other again. The alien raised one of its 4 hands in what might have been a greeting, or a warning. Then it disappeared back into the rice fields. Taeho did not sleep for the rest of the night. He sat by the window, watching and waiting. But the creature did not show itself again. As dawn broke over New Hanyang, he began to wonder if he had imagined the whole thing. Maybe fear and exhaustion had made him see things that were not there. But when he went outside to check on their chickens, he found something that proved the night had been very real. Footprints in the mud around their house. 4-toed prints, each the size of a dinner plate. The shadow hunter had been there. It had walked around their home while they slept, and for reasons Taeho could not begin to understand, they were all still alive. A week passed, and the impossible became routine. Every morning, Taeho found new footprints around their farm. The 4-toed tracks circled their house like a protective barrier. During the day, he caught glimpses of movement in the distant tree line. A shadow that was too large to be human, watching from the forest edge. The shadow hunter was still there, still following him, but it had not attacked. Dongwu's condition was getting worse despite the medicine Taeho had brought from town. The old man's fever came and went, and he spent most of his time sleeping. So Young helped care for him, but her face showed the strain of constant worry. "We cannot keep living like this," she said one morning as they prepared breakfast. "Father needs real medical care, and that thing outside, it has not hurt us," Taeho said quietly. "Yet, it has not hurt us yet." So Young stirred the rice with sharp, angry movements. Why is it here? What does it want? Taeho had been asking himself the same questions. Nothing about this situation made sense. According to every report, shadow hunters killed humans on sight. They were biological weapons created for destruction. They did not follow people around like lost pets. That afternoon, while So Young stayed with their father, Taeho decided to test something. He walked out to the rice fields, moving slowly and deliberately. He could feel eyes watching him from the forest. "I know you are there," he called out, feeling foolish for talking to empty air. "I do not understand what you want, but I know you are watching." No response came from the trees, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Taeho continued his work, checking the rice plants and clearing weeds from the irrigation channels. It was hard to concentrate knowing that a deadly alien creature was somewhere nearby, but the work had to be done. As the sun began to set, exhaustion hit him like a wall. The stress of the past week, combined with poor sleep and constant fear, finally caught up with him. His legs gave out and he sat down heavily beside one of the water channels. "I do not know what to do," he said aloud, not caring if anyone heard him. "My father is dying. My sister is terrified, and you, whatever you are, you keep following us, but you will not show yourself." Tears ran down his face. He was 22 years old, but he felt like a lost child. I am just a farmer. I do not understand any of this. I just want my family to be safe. He put his head in his hands and let himself cry for the first time since the invasion began. When he looked up, the shadow hunter was standing 20 feet away. Teho's first instinct was to run, but something stopped him. The creature was not moving in an aggressive way. It stood very still, its red eyes fixed on his face. Its head was tilted to one side like it was trying to understand something. Slowly, the alien took one step forward, then another. Teho forced himself to stay still, even though every nerve in his body screamed at him to flee. The creature stopped, just out of arm's reach, and crouched down, bringing its massive head closer to Teho's level. Up close, he could see details that had been hidden in shadow before. The creature's armor-like skin had patterns etched into it, almost like tattoos. Its red eyes were not solid, but had depths like pools of fire. And when it breathed, he could see what looked almost like concern in its alien features. The shadow hunter reached out with one of its 4 hands. Teho flinched, expecting claws to tear into his flesh. Instead, the creature's hand stopped just above his shoulder, hovering there like it wanted to offer comfort but did not know how. Then it stood up and walked away into the forest. Teho sat by the water channel for a long time, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The most dangerous creature in the galaxy had just tried to comfort him. The next morning brought a surprise that changed everything. When Teho went outside to feed their chickens, he found a bundle wrapped in what looked like torn fabric, sitting by the front door. Inside were medical supplies, antibiotics, fever reducers, and surgical bandages, all clearly stolen from human sources, but exactly what they needed for Dongwu. Where did these come from? So Young asked when he brought them inside. Teho looked toward the forest. I think we have a guardian angel. A very strange one. Over the following days, more gifts appeared. Canned food from abandoned stores, tools that had gone missing from their shed, now repaired and sharpened. Even small comfort items. A book. So Young had mentioned wanting to read. A bottle of his father's favorite tea. The shadow hunter was taking care of them, but it was not just bringing gifts. Teho began to notice other signs of protection. Scorch marks in the distant field suggested that other alien forces had tried to approach their farm, but something had driven them away. One evening, as he worked in the vegetable garden, Teho decided to try something. Thank you, he said to the forest. For the medicine, for protecting us. I do not understand why you are helping, but thank you. A soft clicking sound came from the trees. Not aggressive like before, but almost musical, like the creature was trying to respond. My name is Teho, he continued, feeling less foolish now. Kim Teho. I am 22 years old. I have lived on this farm my whole life. More clicking, in different patterns. It sounded almost like the creature was trying to copy human speech. Patterns, can you understand me? Teho asked. The clicking stopped. Then, very carefully, the shadow hunter stepped out from behind the trees. It moved slowly, clearly trying not to frighten him. When it reached the edge of the garden, it crouched down again and placed one clawed hand on its chest. Then it made a sound that was different from the clicking. A low, rumbling noise that might have been its attempt at saying a name. That is what you are called? Teho asked. The creature nodded, an unmistakably human gesture that looked strange coming from such an alien form. I will call you Jinwoo, Teho said, choosing a simple Korean name. Is that all right? The alien that was now Jinwoo tilted its head, then nodded again. They looked at each other across the garden. A young human farmer and a creature designed to destroy everything human. But in that moment, neither of them seemed dangerous to the other. My father is very sick, Teho said. I am scared he might die. Jinwoo's red eyes seemed to dim with something that looked like sadness. It stood up and walked to the edge of the rice field, then began pulling weeds with careful precision. Teho watched in amazement as the most feared predator in the galaxy helped him tend his crops. That night, for the first time in weeks, he slept peacefully. Outside, Jinwoo kept watch over the farm, protecting the human family that had somehow become his pack. In the morning, Dongwoo's fever had broken. The old man was weak but alert, and for the first time in days, he was hungry. "You look better, father," So-young said as she helped him sit up. "I feel like I have been sleeping for a very long time," Dongwoo replied, "and I had the strangest dreams. I dreamed that our farm was being protected by a dragon." Taeho smiled and looked out the window. Jinwoo was visible at the forest edge, a dark silhouette against the morning sky. "Maybe it was not a dream," he said quietly. 2 weeks had passed since Jinwoo had first shown himself openly. What started as an impossible situation had become something even stranger: friendship. Every morning the alien would emerge from the forest and help Taeho with farm work. Jinwoo learned quickly, watching how Taeho moved through the rice paddies and copying his techniques. The creature's forearms made him incredibly efficient at tasks that would take Taeho hours to complete alone. But it was not just the physical help that amazed Taeho. Jinwoo seemed genuinely interested in understanding how the farm worked. He would crouch beside irrigation channels, studying the flow of water. He would examine different plants with the same intensity that he probably once used to study enemy battle formations. "He is learning our way of life," Dongwoo observed one evening. The old man was feeling much better and had been able to sit outside and watch Jinwoo work. Like a child learning from his parents. "That is impossible," So-young said. "It is a weapon, a thing made for killing." "So was I during the war," Dongwoo replied quietly. "I killed many men when I was a soldier, but then I came home and learned to grow rice instead. Maybe creatures can change, just like people can." Taeho thought about his father's words as he worked alongside Jinwoo the next day. The alien had adapted to farm life with remarkable speed. He knew which tools to use for different jobs. He understood the daily rhythms of feeding animals and checking crops. He even seemed to enjoy the work. But there were still reminders of what Jinwoo had been created for. Sometimes when aircraft passed overhead, Jinwoo would freeze and scan the sky with predatory intensity. His whole body would tense, ready for combat. In those moments, Taeho could see the deadly warrior hiding beneath the helpful farmhand. And there were the scars. Jinwoo's armored skin was marked with old wounds, blast marks from energy weapons, tears from claws, and burns from explosions. Each scar told a story of battles fought and enemies defeated. One afternoon, while they were repairing a damaged fence, Taeho noticed Jinwoo staring at something in the distance. Following his gaze, Taeho saw a small cloud of smoke rising. "From beyond the hills, what is it?" he asked. Jinwoo made his clicking sounds, but this time they were sharp and urgent. He pointed toward the smoke, then toward the farmhouse, then made a gesture that clearly meant danger. "Other aliens?" Jinwoo nodded and stood up, his whole body language changing. The helpful farm worker disappeared, replaced by something much more dangerous. He gestured for Taeho to go back to the house, then melted into the forest like a shadow. Taeho ran home and found So-young and Dongwoo preparing for the worst. They had heard explosions in the distance and seen military aircraft flying low. "Over the valley. Human soldiers are coming," So-young said, looking through their old binoculars. "I can see vehicles on the main road." 20 minutes later, a convoy of military trucks pulled up to their farm. Soldiers jumped out, weapons ready. Their leader, a captain with tired eyes and dirty uniform, approached the house. "I am Captain Park Ji-hoon," he announced. "We are conducting sweeps for alien infiltrators. Have you seen any enemy activity in this area?" Taeho's mouth went dry. How could he explain Jinwoo? How could he make them understand that not all aliens were enemies? "We have been hiding since the invasion started," he said carefully. "We have not seen much of anything." Captain Park looked around the farm with suspicious eyes. "Your crops look well tended for people who have been hiding, and those footprints in the mud, they are not human." Before Taeho could answer, one of the soldiers shouted from the forest edge, "Contact large alien creature 400 meters north." Gunfire erupted from the trees. Energy blasts lit up the forest and Taeho heard Jinwoo's clicking sounds, now definitely aggressive. No! Taeho started running toward the forest. You do not understand. He is not our enemy. Captain Park grabbed his arm. Are you insane? That is a shadow hunter. Those things have killed thousands of our people. This one is different. Taeho struggled against the captain's grip. He has been protecting us. He has been helping us. The gunfire intensified. Through the trees, Taeho could see flashes of movement as Jinwoo fought the soldiers. But something was wrong. The alien was not fighting with full intensity. He was defending himself, but trying not to kill. Then other sounds joined the battle. More clicking, but different patterns. Other Vorthak forces had arrived, drawn by the combat. Captain Park's face went pale. Multiple contacts, all units, fall back to the vehicles. What followed was chaos. The human soldiers found themselves caught between Jinwoo and a group of newly arrived shadow hunters. But instead of working together, the aliens began fighting each other. Jinwoo placed himself between the humans and his own species, protecting the very people who had been shooting at him moments before. This is impossible, Captain Park breathed, watching Jinwoo tear into another shadow hunter with vicious efficiency. They do not fight each other. They are programmed to work as a unit. Not this one, Taeho said. He chose us over them. The battle was brief, but brutal. Jinwoo was outnumbered, but he had the advantage of knowing the terrain. He led the enemy's shadow hunters away from the farm, deeper into the forest where the humans could not follow. When the sounds of combat finally stopped, Captain Park and his men waited nervously by their vehicles. Minutes passed. Then Jinwoo emerged, from the trees alone. He was wounded. Dark fluid that might have been blood seeped from gashes in his armored skin. One of his forearms hung at an odd angle, but he was alive. The soldiers raised their weapons, but Captain Park held up a hand to stop them. Wait, he said. Let us see what it does. Jinwoo walked slowly toward the farmhouse, ignoring the armed humans completely. When he reached Taeho, the alien crouched down and made soft clicking sounds. Are you hurt badly? Taeho asked, reaching out to examine Jinwoo's wounds. The alien allowed the touch, even though it probably caused pain. Trust like that could not be faked. Captain Park lowered his weapon. I have been fighting this war for 2 years, he said quietly. I have seen shadow hunters tear apart entire platoons without mercy. But this one just saved our lives. He looked at Taeho with new respect. How did you do it? How did you tame a monster? I did not tame him, Taeho replied, still examining Jinwoo's injuries. I just treated him like family. Sometimes that is all anyone needs. So Young approached cautiously, carrying their medical supplies. Jinwoo watched her come but did not move aggressively. May I help? She asked softly. Jinwoo looked at Taeho, who nodded. Then the deadly alien predator allowed a human woman to clean and bandage his wounds. Captain Park shook his head in amazement. Command will never believe this. A shadow hunter that protects humans instead of killing them. Will you report him? Taeho asked, suddenly afraid. The captain thought for a long moment. My mission is to protect human civilians. Today your alien friend helped me do that. He gestured to his men. We saw no alien activity at this farm. Our report will say the area is clear. As the military convoy drove away, Taeho helped Jinwoo into their house. The alien was too large for their furniture, so he settled on the floor near Dongwoo's bed. The old man reached out with a shaky hand and patted Jinwoo's head, just like he would pet a faithful dog. Welcome to the family, Dongwoo said simply. Jinwoo's red eyes seemed to glow a little brighter. For the first time since Taeho had known him, the alien creature looked truly content. 1 month later, everything changed again. Taeho was working in the fields with Jinwoo when the emergency broadcast began. Every radio, every communication device still working on New Hanyang suddenly came alive with the same terrifying message. Remaining human civilians, this is Admiral Chen aboard the UES Defiance. Long-range sensors indicate a massive Vorthak fleet approaching this system. Estimated arrival, 6 hours. This will be a final extermination assault. Any humans still on planet have 6 hours to reach evacuation points. This message will not repeat. Jinwoo stopped working immediately. His red eyes looked up at the sky, and he made clicking sounds that Taeho had never heard before. They were filled with what could only be fear. "What is it?" Taeho asked. "What do those sounds mean?" Jinwoo stood up and gestured frantically. He pointed to the sky, then to himself, then made a cutting motion across his throat. The meaning was clear. They were coming to kill him. So Young came running from the house. "Did you hear the broadcast? We have to leave. Now!" But Dongwoo appeared in the doorway, leaning heavily on his walking stick. "I am not leaving," the old man said firmly. "I am too weak for evacuation. I will only slow you down." "Father, you cannot stay here." "So," Young pleaded, "I can and I will. But you two must go. Take Jinwoo and get to safety." Taeho looked at his father, then at Jinwoo, then at his sister. How could he choose between them? Jinwoo seemed to understand the dilemma. He walked to Dongwoo and crouched down beside the old man. He made soft clicking sounds, almost like he was trying to speak. Then he gently picked up Dongwoo and began carrying him toward the house. "What is he doing?" So Young asked. "I think he has a plan," Taeho replied, following them inside. Jinwoo set Dongwoo down carefully and then went to the corner where they kept their old communication equipment. The alien studied the radio for a moment, then began making adjustments with his clawed hands. To everyone's amazement, Jinwoo activated a hidden function that none of them had known existed. The radio's display showed Vorthak symbols instead of human text. "You can communicate with them," Taeho breathed. Jinwoo nodded and began typing rapidly on the alien interface. Then he turned to face the family and made a series of complex, clicking sounds. His body language suggested he was trying to explain something very important. "I wish we could understand you better," Taeho said. Jinwoo thought for a moment, then went to So Young's teaching supplies. He found paper and pencils and began to draw. The first drawing showed the farm from above, with stick figures representing the Kim family. The second showed Vorthak ships in the sky. The third showed Jinwoo standing between the ships and the farm. "You want to protect us from your own people," So Young said, understanding. Jinwoo nodded and continued drawing. The next picture showed multiple shadow hunters around different farms and buildings, then another showing human soldiers and aliens working together. "There are others like you," Taeho said, "other shadow hunters who have chosen to protect humans." Again, Jinwoo nodded. He pointed to the radio, then to his drawings, then to the sky. "You are calling for help," Dongwoo said from his chair. "You are calling the others." Over the next hour, responses came through the alien communication system. Jinwoo's clicking grew more excited with each reply. Whatever he was planning, he was not doing it alone. Then the Vorthak fleet arrived. The sky darkened as hundreds of alien ships took positions in orbit, but instead of immediately beginning their bombardment, they seemed to be waiting for something. Jinwoo stood up and walked outside. The Kim family followed, staying close behind him. In the distance, dark shapes were moving across the landscape. Not ships, but ground forces. Shadow hunters running with inhuman speed toward gathering points across the valley. But these shadow hunters were not attacking human settlements. They were positioning themselves to defend them. "I do not believe this," So Young whispered. More aliens appeared from different directions. Each one took a position near a human farm or town. Within an hour, dozens of shadow hunters had formed a protective line across the valley. Jinwoo raised one of his 4 arms toward the sky and made a long, complex series of clicks. It sounded almost like he was giving a speech. The response came from orbit in the form of a communication beam that activated their radio. A voice spoke in the harsh Vorthak language, but the anger in it was clear even to human ears. Jinwoo replied calmly, his clicks measured and confident. The conversation continued for several minutes, with Jinwoo apparently arguing with whoever commanded the fleet above. Finally, the alien voice fell silent. Jinwoo made one final statement, then turned back to the humans. "What did you tell them?" Taeho asked. Jinwoo could not answer in words, but his actions spoke clearly. He knelt down and placed one clawed hand on the ground where they had planted rice together. Then he looked up at Taiho and clicked softly. A new voice came from the radio, speaking accented but understandable human language. "This is Fleet Commander Vextar to human settlements on New Hanyang. By order of the Vorthak High Command, this world is hereby classified as a contaminated zone. All Shadowhunter units assigned to this system are considered defective and will be abandoned. No further military action will be taken against this planet." The transmission ended. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then So Young started laughing. "They are giving up, just like that?" "Not giving up," Dongwu said wisely. "Cutting their losses. Jinwoo and the others have made this planet too expensive to conquer." High above, the Vorthak fleet was already beginning to move away. Within hours, the ships had disappeared into hyperspace, leaving New Hanyang in peace. But the Shadowhunters remained. Over the following days, an impossible society began to form. Humans who had survived the invasion slowly emerged from hiding to find alien protectors waiting for them. The Shadowhunters had not only defended the planet, they had been learning human customs and trying to fit into human communities. Captain Park returned with a small military unit, expecting to find a dead world. Instead, he found farms being tended by creatures that should have been humanity's worst enemies. "This changes everything," he told Taiho during a visit to their farm. "If Shadowhunters can choose to protect instead of destroy, if they can learn to live peacefully with humans, the war might not have to continue forever," Taiho finished. 6 months later, New Hanyang had become something unique in the galaxy, a world where humans and former Vorthak warriors lived and worked together. Jinwoo had become an expert farmer. His 4 arms allowed him to accomplish in hours what would take human workers days to complete. But more importantly, he had found his purpose. Instead of destroying life, he was helping it grow. Other Shadowhunters had found their own niches. Some worked in construction, using their strength to rebuild damaged towns. Others served as protectors, keeping the peace with gentle authority. A few had even learned to cook, though their interpretation of human cuisine was sometimes interesting. Taiho often found Jinwoo sitting in the rice fields at sunset, watching the wind move through the grain. The alien seemed to find the same peace in the simple rhythms of farm life that Taiho's family had always known. "Do you miss it?" Taiho asked one evening as they sat together. "The fighting? The war?" Jinwoo's clicking was soft and thoughtful. Then he reached out and gently touched one of the rice plants, his claw careful not to damage the delicate stalk. He looked at Taiho and made a sound that was almost like purring. Then he pointed to the farmhouse where Dongwu and So Young were preparing dinner, their voices carrying on the evening air. The meaning was clear. This was better than war. This was home. The galaxy still fought its battles among the stars. But on New Hanyang, peace had taken root like rice in fertile soil, and it was growing. In the distance, other Shadowhunters worked alongside human neighbors, building something that had never existed before. A future where former enemies could become family. Taiho smiled and patted Jinwoo's armored shoulder. "Welcome home, my friend," the alien warrior